Hi and welcome to DNB Carnegie in our interview with Ependion. My name is Markus Almerud. I'm an analyst here at the bank. I got with me Jenny Sjödahl, who is CEO at Ependion. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Markus.
So you released Q3 earnings yesterday. Starting out maybe with the order intake, it came off from the levels you've seen in previous quarters, even though it grew organically year on year. But what were the drivers of the sequential decline?
Yeah, I think you need to look at the two business entities to explain that. In Beijer Electronics, the order intake level was actually quite stable in quarter three compared to the previous quarters this year, whereas in Westermo, organically, we saw a decline, and that is mainly due to lower order intake from the train segment here in the quarter. So that basically explains that drop.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're using words as temporary, and you also say that we talked yesterday at the call about it being no changes really in demand. How would you characterize demand as we stand right now?
I think demand is stable compared to what we have seen in the last 2, 3, 4 quarters. There's no big change there. And as we talked about yesterday, the order intake in the train segment is not a very good measure of the underlying demand because it can be very lumpy. The order patterns can vary a lot. So it's better actually to look at it more long term, or even look at the sales numbers, which are of course more reflecting the demand here and now, so to say.
So more timing effects is
yes.
What was behind it.
Yeah.
Before going into the respective segments, maybe a short one on defense. You bring up defense as you have started looking into it to make it a possible new focus segment. Maybe a little bit about that. How far have you gotten, and what are your thoughts behind this?
Yeah, I think this is quite a logical step for us, looking at the spend going forward in the defense sector and the type of products that we are supplying. Obviously, when we did the strategy work in the two business entities, the situation was different, and we did not pick defense as a strategic focus segment. But now, with the development that we are seeing, it's a natural step for us to start looking into this. And we have already some very prominent customers in this area that we can build further on, and we see a possibility of growing that business in the coming years. And that's why we're taking the step now to really map our product portfolio to the different applications, looking at our customer base, analyzing that, looking at what certifications might be needed, and so on. So it's a stepwise approach really in looking into this sector.
Mm-hmm. And both business entities, if I understand right, it's no joint effort, but they do it separately.
They do it separately, the way we are running them, and of course we are talking to each other as usual. Mm-hmm. But it's a business entity approach.
And maybe digging into the business entities a little bit, starting with Westermo. You had the Welotec acquisition, which was consolidated in June, if I remember right. It's now integrated. What is the status of the integration, and how is it going?
I think it's going tremendously well, actually. They're off to a really, really strong start, and I'm pleased to see that there is already a lot of joint activities going on in terms of marketing, exhibitions, joint customer visits, both to Welotec's existing customer base, but also to Westermo's customers primarily in the energy sector. So I think we're off to a very, very strong start with Welotec.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's too early to say anything about sales synergies because this is just starting. You're talking about joint meetings, but is it possible to say anything about the reception of the new products in respective customer group?
Yeah, definitely. The feedback that we are getting from these meetings is that customers appreciate the bigger scope that Westermo can now supply when it comes to digitalizing of the substations and so on. So I think it's a very positive reception from the customer side.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe a little bit about the train segment, because that was behind the fall in order intake in Westermo, and you said that it was a temporary weakness. What do you base this on?
Well, I base it on that if you look at the previous 2 quarters, for example, or even previous 3 quarters, we had a much stronger level in order intake, and nothing has changed in terms of our business. This industry does not change that fast, and we are not seeing any indications from our customers or from the markets that the market as such is dropping further. So I see it definitely as a temporary effect.
Mm-hmm. And what about the energy segment? What are you seeing in the energy segment, which is the other big segment in Westermo?
Yeah, obviously with the acquisition of Welotec, we see a tremendous increase in Westermo's total energy business in the quarter, and that was of course the rationale behind this acquisition. But if you look at the organic view on the energy segment, it's a stable development year over year. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then maybe moving down a little bit, also the margin was maybe a bit on the weak side in Westermo, and part of that was you had a standstill in one machine in Stora Sundby, which is the main production unit. Maybe a little bit what happened there, and maybe talk a little bit about the impact from that.
Yeah, it was actually damaged by lightning, very, very tough lightning strike, and it damaged several machines actually related to our surface mounting capabilities. So that led to a standstill of about 3 weeks in that part of the production. And obviously we had to call in, a lot of resources, a lot of suppliers. The team worked really hard to mitigate this, and eventually we got it up and running again. But it was a huge effort, and it did affect our sales in the quarter, as we say in the report, by some 10 million Swedish kronor. And that, of course, also has an impact on the profitability level in the quarter.
Mm-hmm. And then I would assume that even though, because there is insurance covering the actual cost, the direct cost of rebuilding the machines, but you also lost pace, and then you had to catch up to deliver. So I guess both you had the under absorption during the actual time of the machine standing still, and then you had to catch up. So there should have been, an indirect impact on profitability in the quarter from this.
Yeah, that is true, because the catching up period, of course, then you have to run weekends and night shifts and so on, and that is of course more costly than your normal operations. So that assumption is definitely true. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then Beijer Electronics, a little bit different story. You continue to launch X3, and the offering is now complete, you say. What is the status on the order side?
And the status is that we have seen a great interest from our customers. There are some 50 different customers who have placed now smaller orders of X3. And the way customers are typically doing this is that they are, testing the products in their applications, and then slowly they will start to transition to the new series. So we are happy about the big interest from existing customer base.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of timing do you usually expect from kind of these test type orders to them actually making the decision and go ahead? That is, in other words, when would you typically expect to see kind of volume orders start coming in?
Yeah, this is a gradual process, clearly, because customers start testing, and then of course it depends on their product generations when they decide to actually do the shift, if they do it in existing generations or if they wait until they have a new product generation coming out. So it's a gradual process, but I would expect that we should start seeing more volume orders during next year, actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you specifically mentioned Hyundai as an important order. Why do you lift Hyundai, and why do you see it as strategically important?
Well, first of all, it is a very important customer of ours in the marine segment.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I think they're a great example of existing customers, being curious and starting to do this transition to the new range. So that's why we mentioned them particularly.
And they do have X2 now, and you see them as an example of upgrading from X2 to X3.
Yes, that's correct.
And staying a little bit with marine, and then maybe also on manufacturing, what kind of demand do you see in, if forgetting the new range and new product family, what are you seeing on the ground, both the marine and then manufacturing?
Well, we see a strong development year over year in Beijer Electronics for both these segments, actually. For manufacturing, of course, from a low level, but in marine, I think we are seeing a continuous strong improvement and growth over time, which is very positive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you look, and that's year on year, and if you look sequentially between Q2 and Q3 in terms of demand, both in manufacturing but also in marine, is it the same thing that you see marine actually improving and manufacturing is stable, or how would you characterize it?
Well, it's a little bit too short of a time period to look at just sequentially over 2 quarters, I would say. It's relatively stable over Q2 and Q3, I would say.
Okay. And again, moving down, you worked on the cost base over the past couple of years, and you saw quite a good recovery of the margin, up 3 percentage points sequentially. So good improvement in Q1, Q2, and now in Q3 as well. Talk a little bit about the drivers of this.
Yeah, I think that this is showing that the strategy is working as planned, because the whole idea with the strategy was to focus on these 3 key segments and then adjust the product offering accordingly. And then the phasing out of these display solutions, low margin products, was part of that. And that has led to significantly improved gross margin levels in line with what we expected. So that's very positive. And that, in combination with, as you mentioned, the restructuring programs that we have done in several steps, means that I think we now have a very good cost base, so to say, and a decent margin level. So we have a strong foundation for improved profitability once we see the volumes and demand taking off.
Mm-hmm. Because is it fair to say that because you had no display solutions in Q2 and you had no display solutions in Q3, so the difference between the 2 quarters is more the cost base which you have been lowering, which is starting to have an impact? Is that fair to say?
There is also, of course, a holiday effect on the cost side, in the third quarter every year, actually. So I would say that the cost base is the underlying cost base is stable between those 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm. So the business unit it's been on a journey for a couple of years now, with the reorganization, with the new strategy, with the new product family and cutting costs. Are all the big measures done, would you say, so that you're basically waiting for the volumes to come back? Is that the missing piece, or are there other?
Yeah. There are, of course, always more steps to be taken, but I think the major steps that were part of this strategy are now taken. The organization is set and it has been adapted to the new strategy. The X3 series is, of course, a major milestone in this whole journey. So, and the cost cut as well. So I think we have done the major steps, and we are now in a much stronger position than we were a few years ago, with a much more focused business, a partly new team, and I think there's a lot of energy in the organization to actually, make this happen now going forward.
Because we have talked historically about the gross margins. The gross margins in both business units is quite high, and hence the operational leverage is really there. So we need for volumes to come back to kind of see the margins rise. And if we stay a little bit finally on Beijer Electronics, there's an impact from there's 2 things here. You have the business cycle turning up, but you also have the X3. So would you expect that even without maybe the business cycle turning sharply up, that you would still see this volume effect from the new product family maybe starting to work next year?
Yeah, I think so, because coming out with a new series means that you can target new customers with a very strong portfolio, which previously we could not actually. So there's a big potential in starting to talk to new customers with the X3 series. So yes, that's definitely the case.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jenny. Well, sounds very exciting. Looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with the X3 over the next couple of quarters, and then, of course, for the train segment to come back in order intake as well. So, thank you very much for coming here to talk to us.
Thank you, Markus.